Hello, Sweden. Ikea has landed in post-industrial Brooklyn, right next to Red Hook's food vendors.
A lot of diversity here. Not everybody does the same thing. So we'll be able to kind of touch upon some of these different stands, hopefully visit with some people, make some new friends, and eat some good food.
All right.
Let's do it.
So welcome to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Tonight, big picture, small picture. As a big box retailer comes to Brooklyn, we'll weigh assemble-it-yourself bunk beds against a working waterfront. And the macro and micro of skyrocketing oil prices. Hard on the economy, but does this finally make the home solar array worth it? Also tonight, Facebook politics and the upcoming Personal Democracy Forum, plus remembering two media giants, Tim Russert and Tony Schwartz, warts and all. But first, here are this week's online video picks. Number one, Mayor Bloomberg's latest idea, maybe you heard about it, idea for a livable city, is to close off 6 miles of Manhattan streets on 3 Saturdays in August and open them to pedestrians, bikers, dancers, and yoga. Yes, there will be yoga on a stretch of Park Avenue. It works in Bogota, Colombia, as we learn from this video produced by streetfilms.org.
The obesity rates in the U.S. have skyrocketed. Almost every state has obesity. And how else can you get thousands and thousands of people doing physical activity? So then the infrastructure is there. It's free. All you gotta do is close it. And then you can get this fantastic idea, which is like a party that everybody attends.
Esto lo que le ofrece a la gente es muchísima seguridad, muchísima tranquilidad, porque es un espacio muy amplio en el que pueden montar bicicleta, patines o caminar totalmente seguros, totalmente confiados de que no les va a pasar nada.
This is beautiful, man, because everybody smiles at you.
Aparte de que es un trabajo en donde uno hace deporte, es un trabajo que puedes tener contacto directo con las personas y eso es muy gratificante. Cuando ves, digamos, le ofreces una actividad a un niño y él te regala una sonrisa, las gracias, eso es lo más gratificante para mí.
Bogota, Colombia, an inspiration for New York. But let's not model ourselves after traffic patterns in Hanoi, okay? Here is an intersection there, filmed at night and then sped up. This was posted by a video user going by the name Vince's Loss. So let's not try that and say we did, eh? But maybe cities should try more of this, the art of reverse graffiti. Here is the artist known as Moose in San Francisco.
I create a contrast, so where it's dirty and where it's clean, you can see these things like they're black and white. Tonight we're making a mural that's about 140 feet long. It's downtown San Francisco, Broadway tunnel. It's really dirty, it's like a massive canvas. All the images are of indigenous plants from California that you may find in the area where that tunnel is now, maybe 500 years ago. You know, I'm not the world's biggest environmentalist, but it's impossible for me not to toe the environmental line. The whole core of what I do is based around drawing in pollution and writing in nature. Nature's voice, if you like. It's written in dirt like it would be written in blood. But however much the environment thing is rammed home to people, seeing how dirty a wall is by cleaning it in this way, it kind of gets people immediately. They go up and they look at it and they think it's spray paint or something, and then it's just a cold realisation that the world is really, really dirty.
I've been told that guy once got arrested for graffiti, and he said to the police officers, "No, I'm cleaning." That video was shot by documentarian Doug Prey. You can find that on YouTube, posted under the name Reverse Graffiti. Now back to the presidential race for our final picks this week. Pick number 4 comes from a new Obama campaign website called FightTheSmears.com. It was set up just to debunk false rumors, like the lie that Obama refuses to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. This debunking from a Senate floor video from June 21st, 2007.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was easy. But does Obama sing God Bless America? And does he know the second verse? Trick question. There is no second verse. And while Obama and McCain argue over which century to withdraw from Iraq, look who thinks even Obama is too militaristic.
If you could confront Mr. Obama tomorrow, how would you pin him down when he uses that word change?
Well, I probably wouldn't do it directly as much as I would go to his supporter if I was addressing supporters or the audience. That change means nothing. It's just a word, and it's a cliche. And just to repeat it has no meaning. You have to say, what are you going to change? And I would argue, you offer no change. You have the same foreign policy. You want more troops in Afghanistan. You're not talking about only going to war with a declaration. You don't want to deal with the monetary, financial crisis in this country. You want to keep, the system together for the benefit of the banks and the big corporations and the politicians, that argument. And what kind of change do you have on social policy? Do you care about sick people using marijuana? I mean, have you come out for that? And I would just hit him hard on the fact that he doesn't want change. He wants the status quo. And just saying it means nothing, but he has a lot of supporters. And the one time I was asked to comment about him, I actually tried to be, fairly soft on him, but concluded that we have a lot of differences. But I tried to acknowledge that his supporters and my supporters have a lot of overlap, and they do.
Posted just last week by Ron Paul versus Obama. That's already got 200,000 YouTube views as Ron Paul continues to draw a crowd online. And that's our online video picks for this week. It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. This week marked the launch of Discovery Channel's Planet Green, the first 24-hour channel dedicated to original green programming. And this got us thinking. Green is in, but is that because not being green has just gotten too expensive? Joining us to dig deeper into the impact of rising gas and energy prices on the environmental movement are writer and blogger Colin Bevan, a.k.a. No Impact Man, and Darren Lovas, the Vehicle Campaign Director for the NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council. Welcome to both of you. For those of our viewers who don't know your story, you went for a year as No Impact Man, where you tried to make almost no impact on the environment. You weren't riding elevators, you weren't doing practically anything that we take for granted,
not using air conditioners, not using cars or airplanes, and composting everything.
And now you're back on the grid, but how much?
We do what makes sense for a New York family who cares about the environment, who cares about the planet. So, we have electric lights because for a while we didn't, but we haven't reinstalled the air conditioner, and we won't.
So now you're a moderate impact man.
That's exactly right.
And how much did you find the obstacles to living a no-impact lifestyle, or even today living a moderate impact lifestyle, come from you and your habits, and how much come from outside of you?
You know, living sustainably should be like falling off a log, right? It shouldn't even be something that an individual has to work at. Companies should make their products sustainably. Our infrastructure should be sustainable. But the fact of the matter is, what you have to do if you want to live sustainably is work against the infrastructure.
At NRDC, do you find yourself rooting for these high gasoline prices because finally they're going to knock some sense into the American public?
Well, in short, no. We prefer putting policy into place that actually pushes efficient technology into the marketplace that would protect consumers from the high gas prices, and increasing investments in transit that would provide consumers with choices so they wouldn't have to cope with the burden of high gas prices, and actually making it easier for people to live a sustainable lifestyle through public investment and public policy.
In the 70s, gasoline prices suddenly went up, and people changed their lifestyles temporarily. But then the gas prices came down again, and people just kind of absorbed them when they would go up for a while and come back down for a while. Do you think this is any different?
I think it's very different. I think it's very different for a couple of reasons. Basically, global supply and demand because of not just our demand, but China and India industrializing, and because of supply constraints. I actually read a remarkable quote today from the CEO of Total, which is the big French oil company. He said, look, you know, we're going to hit peak production of conventional oil in 2025, and it's going to be hard for us to get there. So I think we're at a remarkable time where I think high prices are with us to stay, basically, and that is going to drive a lot of changes in people's lifestyles and hopefully drive a lot of changes in public policy.
You have a feature that you just posted on your website, how to get out of your car.
Sure. Ways that you can avoid driving so much. I called it how to live a $4 a gallon lifestyle in a $5 a gallon world. And you know, there's all sorts of things we can do, which is...
Are we already nostalgic for the $4 gallon of gas? Is that what we've come to?
I mean, Darren will tell you that, but I feel that way. I mean, we can live closer to our work. We can live closer to public transportation. We can use public transportation. We can bike. And, you know, the other thing is we can ask... I mean, I'm on the board of Transportation Alternatives here in the city, and what we do is we ask New York City to make sustainable transportation like biking and walking possible. Because, you know, people say that America has a love affair with the car, but I would rather call it a forced marriage. Because the fact of the matter is so many of us have no choice but to use our cars. So there's tricks. On my blog, I get a lot of emails from frustrated people who say, you know, I see your tips, but I can't do any of them because I live 30 miles from work. So on top of us as individuals biking and whatnot, we also need to change the way that we're structured.
Speaking of your website, here it is. There's the homepage. Is that the homepage? No Impact Man?
There you go. That's us.
And there it is, how to live a $4 a gallon lifestyle in the coming $5 a gallon world.
Right.
At NRDC, are you using the opportunity to push for certain policy changes that were maybe pie in the sky a year ago, but now you think Congress or anyone else might actually deal with?
We're pushing for them, particularly we're pushing for higher fuel efficiency standards for vehicles. We actually managed to get something enacted into law last year. We're pushing for them to go even higher. We have other energy policy we're pushing. Unfortunately, right now, Congress is also considering opening up new public lands to drilling because the president actually had this one right. It's an addiction, and it seems that a lot of our public officials can't help but look for another fix, basically.
But is it possible that for all your efforts to get people to pass policies because they're the right thing to do, that the market is doing this now for you? Because, look, there are headlines about, you know, Hummers may stop production, and SUVs in general are not selling the way they were. Detroit is caught off guard again. But nevertheless, you know, you can say this is the right thing to do, it'll save the planet, blah, blah, blah. Now it's like, oh my God, I can't afford this, and people are changing.
That's right. No, there is definitely we have the wind at our backs in terms of better energy policy and better climate policy. Something I want to make sure that viewers know is that as hard as things are here in New York City and in the state of New York, in terms of the gas prices, actually people here do have more choices, especially in the city, and can opt out of driving should they choose to. So we've seen, if you look at a map of the United States and look at who is most affected by the gas prices, it's those people in the suburbs way out in the middle of nowhere who don't have any choice. I mean, the suburb I grew up in didn't even have sidewalks, and there are still a lot of suburbs like that, you know, let alone transit or other choices. So,
Hummer sales down by 60%, a plant possibly shuttering, as we've been seeing on the screen. You know, a generation ago, the idea of living green was to get out of the city and get back to the land. The city had air pollution, the city had, you know, rivers that were catching on fire, like in Cleveland, because of all the pollution. Now, we think, well, the city is the green lifestyle because we live with so much more density that we're consuming less, we're producing less garbage than people who live in private homes in the suburbs.
And I think in New York we have a third of the average carbon footprint of the rest of the country. But it doesn't mean to say that we can't do better. You know, I mean, just in terms of, you know, ways to get into the city, people are scared to ride their bikes in New York City. And here's the thing about cars. Of course, nobody wishes the hardship of high gas prices on anyone, but there's also an opportunity here to look at ways to live without cars and possibly be happier. I've seen statistics that say that if you take the time the average American spends in their car and the time they spend working to pay for it, it comes to 3 work months. So if there's a chance that we can, you know, use bikes, use public transportation, not only will we have to spend a lot more time paying for and using our cars, but we'll also become healthier. And so there's opportunities in the crisis.
So is this the time that people in the suburbs can actually find it cost-effective to go out and retrofit their homes for solar energy, for example? Because, again, for a generation, people have been saying, oh, solar panels on the roof, nice idea. Then they go and price it, and they're like, forget about it, I'll just fire up the oil burner.
Now, yeah, solar energy is going to become more cost competitive, and at the same time, there's a bit of a lag time in terms of these the high electricity prices that are hitting homes. People are just beginning to see that in their bills. They will continue to see that over the summer. So that will be layered on top of the high gas prices that they've already been coping with for weeks and months. So it really, especially if you live out in the suburbs right now, it is a tough time to be an average American consumer.
Do you get skeptical of capitalism when you see it giving the same messages that you're giving? You know, there is such a lot of money to be made now in producing products that can be labeled green in one way or the other. Do you think there's a lot of greenwashing going on and you're skeptical, or do you watch all these things, whatever the product or service may be, and you think, right on, people are getting it?
Well, let's put it this way. Somebody who manufactured housing manufacturing materials came up to me once and he said, you know, I do this, I feel like it has less impact. How do I get some sort of a green certification? He wasn't talking about going the extra mile. He was talking about, oh, maybe I can use it as a marketing thing. The fact of the matter is what we have to look at is not, this goes for energy and it goes through materials throughput. It's not just about using differently, it's also about using less.
Darren, the McCain campaign, I think, is posing an interesting challenge to the environmental community in a number of ways, because he's very much breaking with Bush and saying global warming is real, capitalism has to get used to it, take it seriously. But at the same time, here we are, and we have to survive. And so more offshore oil drilling, and look at this headline, McCain calls for building 45 new nuclear reactors. And whatever else we say about nuclear reactors, they don't leave a carbon footprint. Is NRDC, are your peers reconsidering the nuclear question?
No, we aren't reconsidering the nuclear question because of the costs involved, because of the waste issue, because of the various problems that it poses. And until actually proliferation is another one. Those are the big three that we worry about: the cost issue, the waste issue, and the proliferation issue. In terms of investing in nuclear, one thing that I want to make sure that people realize, I'm not sure if Senator McCain is claiming that nuclear energy can do something to help us with our oil problem, but the fact is that it can't. And I don't know if most people realize this, but only about 2% of the oil we use in this country goes to generate electricity. We have almost weaned that sector off of oil. So anything you do to generate electricity as an alternative isn't going to be helpful for dealing with our oil problem. And we see, frankly, the President and we see members of Congress going out there touting nuclear and saying this is going to help us kick the oil habit, and it's just factually incorrect, and they're deceiving people.
What's the next step for you?
The next step for me, the thing that I became really aware of is my family continues to try and live as sustainably as possible, but where we started is where I started is by talking a little bit about the barriers to living green. So there's two things. One, we want to continue to do what we can do personally, but also I hope to be involved in convincing our government, convincing our officials to change the infrastructure in such a way so that, as I said, living sustainably is like falling off a log.
Last thing, though, does it even matter what the United States does? Are we just going to be overwhelmed? Is the planet just going to be overwhelmed by what one columnist called the march of the meat-eating Chinese? In other words, a billion Chinese, a billion Indians becoming middle class at such a rate.
We have to play a leadership role in this problem. We consume 25% of the world's oil. The Chinese consumption is growing faster than ours. Same is true with other sources of energy, and it is up to us to be a leader and to show that there's no reason that they have to industrialize the same we do. There's no reason, I mean, you've heard it before, if China and India industrialize, I mean, that's a third of humanity. If they industrialize like we do, how many Earths will we need to sustain that lifestyle?
So
we don't have to do that.
They say, if you have it, then we have the right to have it, and that debate is for another night. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Brian.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. A heads up, in 2 weeks we will be airing highlights from the 5th Annual Personal Democracy Forum, which begins June 23rd at Lincoln Center. Expect to see some very key thinkers on how the Internet and technology are revolutionizing politics. The forum will be hosted in part by PDF founder Andrew Roche, who delivered a preview on Monday while speaking to the American Association of Political Consultants.
What we're watching in 2008 is the battle between the politics of the 20th century with the politics of the 21st. And there are those who will say that the technology will help you raise money, it might help you get out the vote, might help you get your message out, but I think there's something far more fundamental happening. There's essentially two schools in the use of technology in politics. One school believes that the technology can maintain top-down political control. An organization that believes in that particular strategy and that particular school is actually an organization that most people think of as an internet organization, but it's really an old school political organization. It's called Move On. You've got 3 or 4 people who basically set the agenda for the organization, and yes, they do ask their membership to vote on certain things, and as you know, they've endorsed Barack Obama in this particular campaign. But for the most part, those people who are members have delegated their political opinions and the actions that they take to a few people at the top who sort of tell them what to do. But there's another school that believes that the technology creates a more robust and participatory democracy, where being involved in political life or civic life is not abstract, but actually relevant. And those types of organizations are the ones that we're seeing birth through this particular campaign cycle, because the tools that are available at such a low cost are now so robust that anybody can publish online, anybody can build a social network, and the power of the technology to allow small organizations to have more power than disorganized large organizations is starting to have a deep impact on politics, and you see it through example after example in this cycle with the use of YouTube, Facebook, and MySpace.
Andrew Richey, founder of the Personal Democracy Forum, which begins in 5 days at Lincoln Center. We will broadcast a special about it in 2 weeks from tonight. This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Today, Ikea, the world's largest furniture maker, opened its first outlet in the 5 boroughs. What will it mean to the neighborhood of Red Hook and the borough of Brooklyn? With us to discuss its impact are Red Hook Civic Association co-chair John McGettrick and Municipal Art Society Director Lisa Kersavage. To begin, let's watch a video together. It's propaganda, but sometimes it takes Dean Martin to get us thinking.
In all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through, in that small cafe, the park, across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree, wishing well.
That video posted by Bob Guskind of the website Gowanus Lounge. And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John McGettrick, what were we actually seeing there? You know that area, right?
Yes, that was the street adjacent to the old shipyard that was destroyed with all of the historic buildings. It's Beard Street that runs into Halleck Street, and it probably was the longest stretch of cobblestone street in the city of New York before its destruction.
And what did that have to do with Ikea?
Well, unfortunately, it was one of the things that Ikea demanded when, in fact, it moved into the community and moved about in destroying a historic working shipyard with a very, very working graving dock that Lisa will talk about further. And also, it allowed them to, in fact, create this huge parking lot of approximately 1,430 spaces that apparently is inadequate, we have just found out. And they have taken over another waterfront site immediately adjacent, the sugar refinery site, and in fact for hundreds of additional parking spots.
And here's another site of some of what was, another view I should say, of some of what was destroyed. And Lisa, you know this, right?
I do know this. This is a picture of graving dock number 1 of the Todd Shipyards. There were 2 graving docks on the site. One had been filled much earlier, but this is the working graving dock.
Now what is a graving dock? What does graving mean here?
It actually stems from the French grève, but in fact, graving dock means it's essentially a big bathtub. It's pretty simple technology, and it's got a door that opens and closes. When it opens, the water comes in, a ship can float in, the door shuts, and water is pumped out. So that exposes the whole of the ship. But it's very basic technology, but exceedingly expensive to build new ones. And this was a very, very large one. This was 730 feet long, so essentially a 73-story building laying sideways in the ground.
But are we getting sentimental for something that's in effect obsolete in New York today?
Not obsolete at all. In fact, the city's Economic Development Corporation just released a report that says that the city is underserved by graving docks, and we need to build a new graving dock, if not more than one. There's not many in the country, in fact. The report is very interesting. I hadn't known that there was only 72 facilities in the entire nation. So, you know, I don't know how many exactly graving docks there are, but there's about 27 in the Gulf and East Coast. 4 in New York City. This is one of the biggest.
Is this the same site?
And this is the same site. And these pictures were taken not that long ago. This was 2006, and it shows the SUNY Maritime's ship, the Empire State, in there that was being repaired. There was an outfit called Stevens Technical Services, something like that, that repaired ships here. They had contracts with the city. They were booked up for years in advance.
I guess you lost the lawsuit to save the graving dock.
We did lose the lawsuit. We had, well, we settled the lawsuit. The lawsuit did not achieve our goal, though, of the Army Corps, the U.S. Army Corps, doing the proper job of reviewing this.
John,
I would also interject with regard to this that, in fact, the graving dock itself now is the parking lot, and now people within the administration are suggesting that, in fact, they maybe didn't think it through very well, and in fact, some people at city planning are saying maybe the wool was pulled over their eyes. We've raised this.
Meaning not enough parking for all the demand?
No, they're suggesting that perhaps they shouldn't have allowed the project to proceed, recognizing now the need of the graving dock and the integral part it plays in the future of the Port of New York. But these issues were raised very publicly by MAS and by the community at the scoping session.
MAS, the Municipal Art Society.
And they were ignored.
Right. But my understanding is, before we move on to some other IKEA-related issues, that graving dock was not destroyed. It was paved over for the purpose of this parking lot, but not destroyed.
And that's true, actually. And I think that's an important point for everybody to remember. I mean, I think this is Brooklyn's billion-dollar buried treasure, because really a new graving dock would cost about $1 billion. This was because of some preservation concessions. This was filled in a way that is reversible. So we could...
So you're still fighting this fight?
I am. Yeah, we could do this. We really could do this. And the Army Corps
Would that be to close IKEA or just take away that parking lot?
Just take out, it's about 250 parking spaces in exchange for $1 billion piece of maritime infrastructure.
You know, my producer spoke at length individually with representatives from the Red Hook Tenants Association, the people in the public housing project there, and quite frankly, your name raised quite a stir with them. So, has this IKEA project divided the neighborhood into people in the projects who largely want it because of good prices and jobs, and people who live closer to the waterfront who don't because of what you see as quality of life?
I don't think that's an accurate assessment. In fact, there were many people in public housing that are opposed to it. There were some people that, in fact, strongly support it. There's no doubt within the Tenants Association there was strong support. But at the same time, the co-chair of the Civic Association from Public Housing is equally as vehement in its opposition to the IKEA. And in fact, the adverse impact will be even greater on people in public housing than outside of public housing. Red Hook does not have a subway. The bus service is totally inadequate. The incredible level of traffic congestion, as well as the air pollution that will impact the area where the ball fields are and where children move back and forth frequently, will have a terrible toll.
So just so we have your two positions straight,
right?
You were and are opposed to the existence of the IKEA in Red Hook at all. You don't mind that it's there, but you didn't like the way this pavement was handled?
We didn't like the destruction of this graving dock. We also just don't think that big box stores should be sited on our waterfront. It's a waste of that space. I mean, there's a thriving maritime industry here that's growing. And if we're talking about sustainability, we need to nurture our maritime industry. And so we weren't necessarily opposed to IKEA, but we were opposed to it being sited here. I think people in New York are excited by the retail opportunity IKEA provides. Red Hook does desperately need jobs, and this was providing jobs. But we think that the maritime industry and the growth there needs to be nurtured by the city. That could provide more jobs. The same study said that there could be 500 new jobs in Red Hook with the maritime industry. That's as many as IKEA.
Now, hang on. Let's take a look at another video, this one from the New York Post, which showcases a few pro-IKEA opinions.
We have about 300 coworkers on board, with our focus to get to 600 coworkers once the store is up and running and ready to go. So with that, we've really focused on the local community and Brooklyn in total.
I feel real good about working over here because, you know, it's close to my house.
It's convenient, it's more jobs, it's better for the community, and it'll bring more money in.
I'm very impressed with it. Yes, I think as it comes to a nice community, I think that it'll be good business here.
I think business is going to increase for everybody naturally because of the volume of people that are going to be coming through here to buy goods at IKEA.
I would only say that, in fact, we had come up, it was not a NIMBY proposal, that, a NIMBY community, rather.
Not in my backyard,
NIMBY. Exactly. We had come up with a substantial alternative that involved a Shriver organization from Baltimore that would have invested 15 times more monies in Red Hook, saved the shipyard and the graving dock, use historic tax credits for the structures within the shipyard itself, and generated thousands of more jobs and less pollution in the process. So it was really a very frustrating situation that for an administration to suggest a thinking outside the box. Frankly, they crawled into a smaller one.
How receptive was IKEA to some of your concerns. They say they worked with the community to, promise to provide a reasonable number of jobs to very local residents, to try to mitigate the air pollution, all those kinds of things.
Well, in the draft EIS, they indicated that the air pollution would more than double in the area approximately adjacent to the park. With regard to the jobs, they suggested they would provide job applications to Red Hook 3 weeks before other people. However, it was Red Hook the zip code, not Red Hook the community. Red Hook the zip code includes Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, Borum Hill, parts of Park Slope. They also refused to state how many people actually from the neighborhood of Red Hook actually have received jobs. Beyond that, the fact that they were there on the waterfront, and we think a totally inappropriate site, they could have used the waterfront for delivery of the product. Instead, they have huge tractor trailers coming right through public housing and right through park areas on a regular basis, adding to the congestion and the pollution.
Lisa, is the city, are the people of the city at war with big box retailers in general right now? You remember the whole brouhaha about Walmart wanting to come in a few years ago, and that was stopped by popular demand. This Ikea was, managed to get built, and Ikea, I don't know, they have a different reputation than Walmart, don't they? They're seen as more of a progressive, more of an environmentally friendly kind of company. I'm not sure about their labor practices.
I'm not sure about their labor practices either. I think that's what got Walmart in so much trouble. But I think with all big box stores, studies have shown that the money doesn't necessarily stay in the community. And I think that's really critical for us to consider when we're looking at economic development policies that are so focused on big box retail instead of nurturing other industries. I think the issue with Ikea is also a larger planning issue. We need to really comprehensively plan in New York City. We need to decide where it's appropriate to put big box retail, not on the waterfront is a good start, and where it's not. And I think there's some big box that's better than others. In terms of the urban form, there's a Home Depot on 23rd Street that's in a historic building. It's smaller. It seems to be offering jobs and services, which is great. Ikea and whether they're green and more sustainable or not, I question. I don't know where their furniture is made, but they're not shipping it in. If they had at least shipped stuff in to this site, that could have been more green.
As opposed to what?
Well, they're trucking it. They're trucking it through the neighborhood. I mean, it must come into the Port of New York somewhere, but it's trucked over.
Right. They talk about green forestry practices, good forestry management practices for all the logging that they will deal with for the wood that goes into their furniture. And I know it's an international operation. They also talk about not employing any contractors that use child labor, which is not much of an issue in the United States. So this wood is obviously coming from sources overseas.
They also have not been receptive to unions in the United States, and in fact in Jersey and Elizabeth fought it very vehemently when in fact there was a number of years back. They also talk about all of the benefits they provide. However, a substantial number of the workforce works less than 20 hours. If you work less than 20 hours, there are certain benefits that are not available to you. So these are some issues that really were not addressed very forcefully. And most importantly, I think, the location of the store itself. It's not next to a highway. It is, in fact, different from almost every one of their other stores. You're taking this huge train of traffic, essentially almost 40 miles long, just one way on a Saturday, into a neighborhood that's a small peninsula without a subway, less than 3/4 of a mile deep. And then it goes back out, pretty much the same way.
You say a huge train of traffic, also a huge bus of traffic. I heard that the B61 was more crowded this morning than it ever was on the way to Ikea.
Well, that even compounds the problem even worse, because the city, the MTA, expanded the bus lines. They expanded the 61 and the 77 to incorporate Ikea. In fact, it's called Ikea Terminal, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. It's now the end point of the route, officially on the city buses.
But not only have they lengthened the route and made it a point of really going into a very congested area as a result of the Ikea, but they have not added any additional buses whatsoever. So invariably, inadequate bus service will become even worse. The headway in Red Hook is supposed to be about 10 minutes because we don't have a subway on the 61. Tonight on the way home before I came here, I checked it. It was 25 minutes for the first bus to come by.
I wonder if either of you are aware enough of the online world to know if there was much of an effort made to organize on the web to fight this. Because We're aware of how Brooklyn is supposed to be the bloggingest borough, but there are very few blogs dedicated specifically to Red Hook. Was there a blogging community that tried to organize either for or against this?
There was somewhat of an effort, but over time it's hard to sustain it. B61 was one indication of one that did pay a certain amount of attention to it.
That's a web address?
A web address. And there were several other operations that were set up to focus attention on it. But they were originally going to open in 2003. And now it's 2008. So, in fact, the struggle went on for 5 years.
And Sundays, go ahead. What do you want to say?
I was going to say that there wasn't a website or blog specifically dedicated to this, but I did feel, you know, with Bob Guskin and Gowanus Lounge and some of the real estate blogs with Curbed, they really did follow and really supported, I believe, a lot of what we were saying.
There was also a Sunday Daily News article this week that says Walmart, Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, Trader Joe's, all have looked at properties in Red Hook recently. So is this just the beginning?
I hope not. I mean, I think that the city really needs to plan in Red Hook. The citizens of Red Hook put together a community-based, consensus-driven plan that encouraged the retention of manufacturing and maritime uses. I think that we really need to consider whether fragile Red Hook can handle all of the traffic that will be there. It's not well served by public transportation.
And also our 197A plan that was adopted, for example.
What is that?
Okay. It's a section of the city charter that allows a community to plan for its future. Red Hook desperately needed such a plan because since the 1960s, we've lost half our population. And by the 1980s, we became a dumping ground for pretty much everything that other parts of the city did not want. We had 20 garbage dumps. We were being suggested for 2 sludge plants and the largest waste processing facility on the East Coast. So subsequently, we came up with this plan under the components of the charter. It was approved by a community board vote in June of 1994 by a vote of 34-0 with 1 abstention. And it talked about rebuilding the lost population. It talked about mixed-use redevelopment and the maintenance of the waterfront.
Just give me 30 seconds on this, and then we got to go. If Trader Joe's, Bed Bath & Beyond, Walmart, Target are all looking at this community, it must mean people want to shop there, people want the jobs that will be created there. Why not let the market work?
Or it might be cheap for them to build there right now.
Is that not the public will?
I'm not sure it is the public will. I think that the public has supported businesses that are more in our commercial centers as much or more than they might, you know, on the fringes. And just because it's convenient for the developers to build there doesn't mean that it's right for our city.
Ikea has landed. It opened today in Red Hook, but obviously the debate goes on. Thank you both very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Another slice of Red Hook life that Ikea could affect is the famous Red Hook ball field food vendors, and we will hear from some of them in a minute.
Hi, I'm Matthew Goldstein, the Chancellor of the City University of New York. Look who's teaching at CUNY. Michio Kaku, string field theorist and international authority on theoretical physics. John Corleano, Academy Award and Pulitzer Prize winner in music. David Nassau, winner, Bancroft Prize for Best Biography. Jill Barganetti, Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers. Gregory Rabassa, recipient the National Medal of Arts in 2006 from President Bush. Elizabeth Nunez, winner, American Book Award. Godfrey Gumbs, American Physical Society Fellow and member, New York Academy of Sciences. World-class talent, award-winning scholars, CUNY is their classroom, CUNY is your university.
There's something about you, baby. I can't get enough. There's something about you, baby. I got you looking at me, I'm gonna call you bluff. There's something about you.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. It takes a man to be a dad.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. For the last 30 years, Latin American food vendors have congregated at the Red Hook ball fields every summer weekend to feed local immigrant soccer players and their families. But over the last decade, word has leaked out about this multicultural treasure. Blame the gastro-bloggers, I guess. As gentrification firmly took hold in the area, a food fight broke out with the city over health codes and concession rights. There were internal battles as well among vendors. Here to discuss the current condition of this beloved open-air food court is Red Hook food vendor. He is an expert at flipping plantains and fighting City Hall, Cesar Fuentes. Hi, welcome to the program.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for having me here.
First, let me get the Ikea thing out of the way because there's so much more to talk about with this.
Absolutely.
Do you expect Ikea to have any particular impact on the vendors?
Not directly, unless, of course, traffic issues would affect the flow in their own affair.
How long have the vendors been selling food at the ball fields? I said 30 years.
Well, actually, Brian, they've been operating in the Red Hook Park in one form or another since 1974. That is 34 years ago, a very long time.
I saw that someone was following you around with a camera. And that the food vendors, that you were accompanied by a Swedish student doing a documentary on some of the Red Hook food vendor families. Why is this of such interest to people, not only around the city, but around the world?
You know what? It's quite a phenomenon. I'd like to see it in a way that Latin American food just brings so much into it historically. Just the fact that we're in one of the the greatest cities in the world, and we're able to provide this culinary delights to so many people to try. Someone who maybe in Sweden couldn't ever try a taco or a Salvadorian pupusa actually has a chance, and then of course, my God, it's great. They come back.
You know, Ikea sells Swedish meatballs in their store. You can't get that at the Red Hook ball fields, right?
We hope that maybe they can set up a stand with Swedish meatball tacos or lingonberry horchata.
Now, for those of you unfamiliar with what's cooking over at the Red Hook ball fields, here's a clip from New York Magazine's YouTube channel.
Here, we're really lucky because this is kind of like the epicenter of a lot of great home-style food. There's a lot of diversity here. Not everybody does the same thing. So we'll be able to kind of touch upon some of these different stands, hopefully visit with some people, make some new friends, and eat some good food.
All right.
Let's do it, man. But I think what we should focus on maybe on this one is have some carne asada tacos. They're serving marinated beef on tacos, and then all the fixings are on the side.
Right.
So you can kind of put yours to al gusto or to your taste.
This is your regular carne asada, which is a grilled beef taco.
Yeah.
This is a braised goat?
Braised goat. They know how beautiful this meat is, so they're not putting the lettuce on top of it.
Yeah,
they're not putting a tomato on top of it. They know that this should be had just with a little salsa, and that's it.
You got one of my tacos over there.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to heist you. Don't worry, brother.
Bogart, the barbacoa.
He's actually from where my chef is from at Paladar, so it's kind of like we're having a little bit of nostalgia. Tienes las tortillas de piastra, ¿no? So she's going to make me a very special tostada, ¿no? Sí. Me vas a prepararme una tostada. Sí, esta la están preparando. And this particular one has beef foot.
We have a, that's good. Is that good, huh?
It's pickled. It's pickled. You want to try?
Sure.
You only go around once, right?
I see a Red Hook cook-off coming. Swedish meatballs versus soccer tacos.
I tell you, my God, I hope we break some Guinness Book record.
How close is the Ikea store to the ball fields?
Well, it's about actually 2 long blocks.
Just 2 blocks?
Regular city blocks, I would say maybe 4, just down Bay Street and turning into a
So maybe you're going to get a lot of traffic, right? People parking in the Red Hook parking lots and then walking around the neighborhood before or after they shop, no?
Well, probably. We really hope that doesn't affect us that much, although every weekend, for as long as the vendors have been there, there's always been traditionally a congestion on Bay Street, right on where we operate. Of course,
is that good or bad?
Well, I think that's good. If it says anything about our, I guess, peculiar attractiveness to the food, even having MTA buses double park in front, paramedics. I hope they don't have any patients inside, just waiting for for a taco. I think it could be not so good. We really hope that it doesn't. We have heard that Ikea has actually gotten some transportation of their own. Even in one food blog, I was actually very happy to find that they even, some customers were planning to use the ferry or some of the shuttle buses to actually hop into the Red Hook food vendor. So in fact, actually compliments of Ikea, we might even make it easier for our customers to get there.
Now, this is a seasonal thing, so are the vendors back in full force for summer?
Well, yes, we are planning on, not yet. Unfortunately, there's still some compliance issues to be met before we can officially open for business.
Compliance issues, meaning?
Meaning Department of Health, meaning that we are actually coming back not in the traditional tarps, tents. We are actually going to be having trucks this time, but in order to have the trucks out there, they need to be, well, first, pass inspection and of course be cleared.
The trucks, that's an example of your growth, because you're actually having to cater in stuff, not just like set up little stands, right?
Well, actually, that's an example of change. Unfortunately, we really reminisce the old style. We feel that the character, that part of the character, besides the deliciousness of the food, was actually the fact that our setup was very rustic, very authentic, something that will remind you of an old world food bazaar, so to speak, the old tarps. And missing that, we hope that it doesn't create an impact.
So there was a time when it seemed like you guys thought the city was out to get you and shut you down. Then it seemed like the city was really out to preserve you, but regulate you. Is that where we are? Are they harassing you? We just have 30 seconds, but is this headed in the right direction for a positive resolution?
I think we're absolutely heading in the right direction. Obviously, change is difficult, and it was very difficult to find out where or who or what did it. But the important thing is to know that we actually conquered. There's still some way to go, but we're here. And
this is a small business model that you think other communities can learn from?
I absolutely think so. In fact, actually, as soon as this continues, I think there are many other things, other vendors that would like to do the same thing, not just Latin American vendors. I see a whole movement starting.
Cesar Fuentes, a big part of that movement. He cooks, he organizes, he lobbies, he flips plantains. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much,
Good
Brian.
luck out there.
Thank you.
Finally this week, the passing of two media giants from two generations, Tim Russert and Tony Schwartz, both trendsetters in the field of political media. Tim Russert, host of Meet the Press, had nearly unprecedented access to politicians and newsmakers. Here is a clip of some of his interviews from the memorial segment of Meet the Press this past Sunday.
If I told you it was 25% of your state lived below the poverty line, would you believe me?
I could believe you, yes.
Are these the kinds of things the governor should know? Who the largest employers are? How many people live below the poverty line? You have said that part of your $400 billion deficit
I've also told your program
is $180 billion.
Yes, may I finish?
May I finish? It was a simple question.
Well, you've already finished. Go and finish again. It's your program. You can do anything you want to with it.
Will you allow North Korea to build a nuclear bomb?
North Korea cannot be allowed to develop a nuclear bomb. We have to be very firm about it.
Filegate, Travelgate, Whitewater. What's wrong with those as legitimate issues?
Look at all this Whitewater stuff. What's come out of it? Absolutely nothing.
Would you be willing to retract or apologize for some of the things you said?
If I can defend every word that I speak, and every word that I speak is truth, then I have nothing to apologize for.
In light of not finding the weapons of mass destruction, do you believe the war in Iraq is a war of choice or a war of necessity?
I think that's an interesting question. Please elaborate on that a little bit. A war of choice or a war of necessity? I mean, it's a war of necessity.
Mr. Secretary, you say pre-stage people were sent to the convention center. There was no water, no food, no beds, no authorities there. There was no planning.
We'll have time to go back and do an after-action report, but the time right now is to look at what the enormous tasks ahead are.
Many Americans believe now is the time for accountability.
Look, I was asked, I shouldn't have said that, so I've been in public life 25 years. You're going to find a lot of these. It seems you found them all here.
Well, I'm just trying to set the record and trying to give you a chance to respond, which is fair. Senator John McCain, thanks for joining us and sharing your views.
I haven't had so much fun since my last interrogation.
But for all his high-profile interviewing, all his laudable toughness, there was a side of Russert that's being glossed over in this week of memorial tributes. He has been criticized, you know, for his gotcha interviewing style. Russert has helped to give rise to a generation of interviewers bent on creating the unanswerable question, not always useful. And he was one of many who did far too little to question the administration's march to war before the Iraq invasion. Russert's insider access might have been put to better use back then, but he was learning, maybe from being misled so often. Tim Russert was 58 years old. Media consultant Tony Schwartz also died this week. He is best known for the Daisy Spot. Here is that powerful political ad made for Lyndon Johnson's 1964 presidential campaign.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 8, 9, 9.
'These are the stakes to make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
Notice this ad never mentions LBJ's opponent, Barry Goldwater, and it aired only once, but it did its job. Tony Schwartz knew the power of video long before YouTube. Was it a fair attack? Well, Goldwater did have the reputation of an extreme anti-communist, but to equate that with his being nuclear trigger happy, was that right? Tony Schwartz harnessed the power of TV and radio for good causes he cared about, including an early campaign against smoking. But whether he was a pioneer of something wholly good, the video as propaganda, I am afraid not. But he might say he was only fighting fire with fire. Tony Schwartz was 84. And that's it for tonight's show. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. You can join the conversation all week long at brianlehrer.tv. Next week, John McCain's healthcare plans, and in 2 weeks, highlights of the Personal Democracy Forum. And please tune in to my daily radio show, The Brian Lehrer Show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC. Tomorrow morning, a Personal Democracy Forum preview, what Obama learned from the online Dean campaign. That's at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning on 93.9 FM and AM 820 WNYC. If it's not too late, have a great night.